Hello and welcome to episode number 36 of JRock's Pop Culture Revolution. I am your host, Jason JRock Houston. And as we're starting, as we always do, I like to thank my good friend Tom Collier and the folks at Fire Rock Music Group for putting our show over on their YouTube page. Since we've done that, a lot more people have been checking out the show. So we're really grateful and appreciative of that. But anyways, tonight is episode number 36, as I said. It's going to be a real fun one. They all are, right, folks? But um, what makes this so much fun is every time you tune into an episode, you really don't know what you're going to get. We're going to be talking about something, of course, pop culture related. And I thought it would be real fun tonight because it's been a while since we talked about done a music kind of themed episode. So I thought would be real fun is to talk about Judas Priest. Specifically, they just had a new greatest hits collection called The Best of Judas Priest come out this last Friday on June 19th. This is what it looks like. The Best of Judas Priest. Now, before we go any further in our episode, I thought I should let y'all know that this is going to be another two-part episode. So there's so much to look forward to that. And we had to make it a two-part episode, folks. I got to tell you initially, when I got the idea to do this episode, I thought, yeah, it'd be real fun. Judas Priest has a best of album coming out. That'd be fun to kind of talk about Judas Priest, so let's do it. But then I also thought, hey, in doing some of the research, come to find out Judas Priest's been around 57 years. That's pretty, that's one of the longest, most successful heavy metal bands I've ever heard of. I mean, 57 years. Come on, folks. Almost 60, in a few more years. So I started to realize that there's going to be a lot of Judas Priest to talk about because also it's been reported later in the year they're going to re-release, have a special anniversary edition of their debut album, Rock-a-Rolla, which is a very different sounding album for Judas Priest, and there's many reasons for that. And so I imagine down the line we'll be doing a special episode on that as well. There's also a Judas Priest documentary coming out later this year, so there's going to be a lot of Judas Priest to talk about. So in part two of the episode next week, what we're going to be talking about is the infamous 1986 trial that Judas Priest was part of. They were sued by the parents of, back in 1986, this was, by the parents of two Judas Priest fans who committed suicide, killed themselves while listening to the music of Judas Priest. And so the band was actually sued over that, and they actually had to go to trial, and they came out victorious, thank God. But that was really a case for the books, if you will, because they became a true defenders of metal, if you will. And we're going to get into that because it was major news back then. We're going to talk about how all the major media outlets covered it. But let's get into talking about the best of Judas Priest, as I said, just came out last Friday, June 19th, 2026. Now, they've put out some greatest hits collections. Or let's talk about why now and why this is so different. Now, let's talk about the track listing. Now, if you get the vinyl version, I believe you only get 10 tracks on the album, but if you get like me the CD version, you get 16 tracks. So I'm one that always would love. I'd rather get more than less, if you know what I mean. And plus, I myself don't have a vinyl record player to play it on, so I still buy physical CD. So this is my choice. And how cool it is that you get 16 tracks instead of 10. Now, let's go and talk about the track listing for the CD. Okay, these are the songs that are featured on the Best of Judas Priest album. You've Got Another Thing Coming, Lightning Strikes, Breaking the Law, Beyond the Realms of Death, Painkiller, Hell Bent for Leather, Rock-a-Rolla, Turbo Lover, Electric Eye, Crown, Crown of Horns, okay. Then it says Living After Midnight, Rocket to the Dog. As you can see, one of my all-time favorite Judas Priest tracks. Okay, and then we get Nightcrawler, Heading Out to the Highway. That's always been another one of my favorite Priest songs. Better by You, Better Than Me. the Sentinel, Diamonds and Rust. Okay, so that's the track listing for the album, and we're going to break down and talk specifically about some of these songs. But I thought you'd also be interested in learning some fun facts about this compilation. Well, it says, okay, the best of Judas Priest. It includes songs from 13 different studio albums. That's pretty amazing. But what do you expect when you have a band that's been together 57 years? And to have a CD where you only got 16 songs. I mean, they could have made this a double album, but I think this is pretty cool for what it is, and we're gonna get into why that is. Now, Rockarola, the song Rockarola finally gets some representation here. Many greatest hits collections by Judas Priest in the past has not featured anything off of the Rockarola debut album. And as I said, Rockarola, anybody that's, I urge you to, if you've never heard Rockarola, the very first Judas Priest album, so to go on YouTube and check it out because you can find the entire album there. Like I said, they're in the process of remastering and all that, and they're going to put out a special, I think, 50th anniversary edition of that later this year. So we have that to look forward to. Now, the interesting thing, anybody doesn't know anything about Rockarola, is if you go and listen to it, it sounds much more like a progressive rock album than anything you'd ever expect from Judas Priest. Part of a reason for that is when they wrote those songs, they were written with the original Priest singer Al Atkins in mind. However, he eventually left Judas Priest and was replaced by Rob Halford. So when Halford joined the band, he came in and he recorded the songs for Rockarola. But these were songs that you got to understand were written with Al Atkins in mind, and that's why the band sounded so different on that album. Okay, so there are two modern era tracks that are featured. Lightning Strikes from Firepower, the latest Priest album. And then you got Crown of Horns from Invisible Shield. This shows Sony wanted to represent the band's acclaimed, the classics, but also wanted to feature the later day hits off of some of the more recent studio albums, and that's pretty cool because in the past, when you got a Judas Priest Greatest Hits collection, we pretty much got all the great classic songs from the 1970s and 80s. Stuff like "Living After Midnight," "Heading Out to the Highway," "Electric Eye." All those "Breaking the Law," all those great songs that you'd expect to hear. "Metal Gods," "Metal Gods." Okay. Now, in regards to this new Best of Judas Priest album, one complaint that a lot of fans have had, and again, the album's only been out a couple days, so we're not really at a point where we talk about how it's charted and all that because it hasn't been out for enough for that long, just a couple days. But people are complaining that it does not feature Metal Gods on the compilation. For a compilation called The Best of Judas Priest, many fans expected to have Metal Gods, but it didn't make the final cut. Other notable omissions include The Green Manalishi, Free Will Burning, and Ram It Down. And I think the reasons some of those songs were left off was simply that the record company in Judas Priest, they wanted to put out Epic Music, Epic Records rather, wanted to put out more of a career spanning kind of. They wanted to include maybe some stuff that had never been made available on previous best of collections. Okay, and so again, like I said, this best of collection, it arrives right before Judas Priest is getting ready to release a documentary. And again, keep in mind that Judas Priest is they've sold over 50 million albums worldwide. So this is a great way to kind of celebrate that, remind people of not only what Judas Priest has done in the past, they're still here, they're still pumping out new music. They're currently in the studio as we sit here doing this, recording their next studio album, which from what I understand, is supposed to come out in 2027 next year. So Be on the lookout for that. I know I am. Fans' reaction has been mixed because, again, as great as I think this new Best of Judas Priest um, album is, for some of the purists out there, again, they're complaining that I would rather had Metal Gods on this than maybe Rockarola and stuff like that. So um, now let's talk about some of the deep cuts that are featured here. Now, Beyond the Realms of Death is the oldest true fan favorite as far as a deep track here. The collection and is often cited as one of Priest's greatest songs. Okay, the Sentinel is frequently regarded by hardcore Priest fans as the band's finest guitar showcase. Um, Diamonds and Rust is actually a cover, a song by folk singer, if you can believe it, Joan Baez. The Judas Priest version became one of their signature tracks. And if you've ever seen Judas Priest in concert, that is a song, even though it's a Joan Baez cover, that was one of the first songs that became a major hit for Judas Priest. And to this day, if you go see the band in concert, they still play that live in the live set. So it's still getting performed by the band 50 years later. Nightcrawler is the only song from Painkiller besides the title track, giving that album 2 spots on the Best of collection. So Painkiller is the only album throughout the history of Judas Priest that gets 2 tracks on this new Best of. That's pretty cool. Now, of course, let's talk about now some of the tracks. Well, not some. We're going to talk about the tracks that make up this album. Of course, the album gets off to a great start with, of course, You've Got Another Thing Coming, Another Thing Coming. It's Judas Priest, biggest hit in North America, written as an anthem of determination and perseverance. It's one of those great rock anthems of all time. Great. It's a great way if you ever had a chance to go see Priest in concert. It's one of those songs where people get up, they start putting their fist in there, they start banging their head and just going crazy and showing their love for metal, if you will. It became a staple of MTV, during the early 1980s. So again, there is a music video for You've Got Another Thing Coming. If you haven't seen it, go on YouTube and check it out. It's pretty cool stuff. And Priest, I got to say, is one of those bands that they probably right next to both Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden. I'd probably say Judas Priest is the one band that really kind of signified the heavy metal look, of leather and studs and what heavy metal really looked like. I mean, Rob Halford became known as the metal god, if you will, and come to find out years later that it had a lot more to do with Rob Halford, his sexuality. Apparently in the early 70s, he would go to these sex shops in London and he'd buy all these leather outfits, and people were really thinking that he was trying to, go for the heavy metal look. And I think it was part of both things. It was part of him being, secretly gay, because back in the 1970s and even in the early 80s, I remember before Rob Halford came out of the closet, so to speak, in the 90s, there were rumors and there was always talk about his sexuality, but he kept it under the table because back in the 1970s and 80s, the world was a much different world, and it wasn't safe to come out. You'd get backlash, and we're living in a very different world. And the neat thing for Rob Halford, the metal god, is when he finally did come out, his fans were so accepting of it, and he didn't really receive much backlash. People were a little surprised, but like I said, the background, there'd always been talk about Rob Halford, but nothing really became official about it until he came out. And we only bring this up because, again, there are a few people surprised when he came out about it, but pleasantly, he did not really receive any backlash. And the metal community is really supportive of Rob Halford coming out. And I think, again, that just proves the fact that we are living in such a different, world these days, and that more and more people are able to do that these days if they want. Now, Lightning Strikes, okay. This is a song that was originally came out in 2018. It's from the album Firepower. And I should note that it's the first single from Firepower. It showed that Priest could still write aggressive modern metal songs nearly 50 years into their career. And that's another thing I got to give to Judas Priest. Like I said, they keep pumping out new music. Yeah, we're talking about a best of collection here, but that's, again, after a 57-year career, I think they deserve to put out a best of and celebrate what they've done and look back on their victorious 57-year career. It's just amazing that the mighty Priest is still here standing. Now, again, Rob Halford's been back for a number of years now. Sadly, the dual axe attack of KK Downing and Glenn Tipton are no longer part of Judas Priest. KK Downing left about 10 years ago. Glenn Tipton has been suffering the last several years from Parkinson's disease. He's still kind of involved with the writing when they go in and record new music, but and I think he still plays on some when they go in and record. He records guitar parts if he's able to on the last couple Priest albums. I don't know if he's going to appear on the new one that they're currently working on, but from all reports, his Parkinson's disease seems to be getting a little worse. Seems like it's progressing, and we hope that Glenn, is doing as best as he possibly can. But so now you got Richie Faulkner in there filling in for KK Downing. You got I think Andy Sneap, who's the other guitar player that goes out on the road with the band. And so Judas Priest is still just pumping away. You got probably then you got Rob Halford, Ian Hill, the bass player. They're the two oldest members of Judas Priest. Got Scott Travis, who's been there ever since Painkiller in 1990, and he was also the drummer in Fight for a couple of years when Rob Halford left Priest and went and did Fight. So Scott Travis is also he's a veteran of Judas Priest, and even though he's a one member of Priest that's not British, he's an American. But he's fit into Priest pretty nice, I think. In fact, he's the longest standing drummer in Judas Priest. He's there've been a few other drummers before, but he was the one that lasted the longest. And I think it's just because what a great talented drummer he is. Now, Breaking the Law, of course. Another one from 1980 off of British Steel, which was the band's breakthrough album in America, and just was a hit worldwide. Let's be honest, but that was a big breakthrough album for Judas Priest in America here. So let's just be honest about that. And Breaking the Law, okay, is arguably the most recognizable metal riff ever written. I mean, probably the only thing that might be more recognizable than the riff from Breaking the Law is, of course, Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple. Beyond the Realms of Death, like we said, that's been a long time Judas Priest favorite by the fans. It's one of the band's earliest masterpieces, if you will. Okay, and now it also features one of guitarist Glenn Tipton's most celebrated solos. Others cited by hardcore fans are one of Priest's greatest songs. Why is it here? Well, the compilations, it's probably got to be the compilation's biggest deep cut. They wanted to feature some of the cuts maybe that were not previously featured on any former greatest hits collections that have been put out by the band. Number 5, one of my all-time favorites, another great kind of real heavy metal type of riff from KK and Glenn. The title track from a 1990 album, Painkiller. Um, it's considered one of the greatest heavy metal songs ever recorded. And like I said, in regards to Painkiller, this is the album and the song that introduced Scott Travis as a new Judas Priest drummer. It features one of Rob Halford's most demanding vocal performances, and that is saying something. I mean, you know what I mean? Now, another thing is you see as we go through the tracks here on the Best of Judas Priest is another interesting thing about the Best of Judas Priest CD is a lot of times you get a greatest hits collection and they're put together chronologically. Like they will put the oldest songs first and then, and go down the list. And so you start off with, since like Judas Priest has, 50-year career here. Well, I should say 50 plus career because they've been around 57 years. They might start off with material from the 1970s and then work their way. The album is where something came out in the late 2000s because that's the history of Judas Priest. But one thing I noticed right off the bat is the track listing's all over the place. It's not in any chronological order like you'd expect it to be. And so, like again, okay, it starts with You've Got Another Thing Coming, and it moves into Lightning Strikes, which is one of the more newer Priest songs off of the last couple of studio albums the band put out. So the order of the album, the way the songs appear, it's all over the place. But I think that makes for an interesting sounding kind of way to listen to the album, if you will. Like when I was listening to the CD in my car just yesterday, going somewhere. The fact that it's not like put together chronologically, it's an interesting way to listen to the CD, and it allows you to really kind of listen to the songs and not think about, oh, well, this is the order these songs were released, So I like the fact that it's not chronological and that track listing is just all over the place, Now, Hell Bent for Leather. This song came out originally in 1978 off the album. Now, this is interesting because the album has been had different titles. It was originally known as Killing Machine, but it's better known as Hell Bent for Leather, the title track. It helped establish Leather and Stud's image, later adopted throughout metal, inspired Halford's famous motorcycle entrance into the Judas Priest concerts. Anytime you go see Judas Priest, that's the track that he does that to. You'll hear Hell Bent for Leather, and the band will start doing their magic, and Halford comes out on the motorcycle. I seen it myself, like on the Painkiller tour, and man, that was just awesome thing to see. We talked a lot about the song Rock-a-Rolla tonight. Again, Rock-a-Rolla is one of the oldest Judas Priest songs. In fact, it comes off the debut album by Judas Priest. It's the oldest song featured on the Best of Judas Priest collection. Again, the song came out originally in 1974. It sounds more hard rock and blues based than later Priest material. Rarely appears on any of the past greatest hits collections. Why it's here? It's well, like I said, it's a nod to the band's origins. It's a nod to what came first, if you will. It's a very kind of thing we got to hear from Judas Priest. So why not? After a 57-year career, I think you need to go back with a debut album and kind of hear what they sounded like then in 1974, and give it a listen to Invisible Shield, the latest album, came out just a few years ago. And then another great track, Turbo Lover. Now, Turbo Lover is one of the band's most successful synth-driven tracks. Again, you got to remember 1986 when they released, the Turbo album. Turbo Lover was the single, and they did a music video for that. And not only did the band have a very different look, but had a very different sound. You got to keep in mind that also in 1986, Eddie Van Halen, Van Halen just changed their lead singer. Sammy Hagar was in, and David Lee Roth was out. And Eddie Van Halen, known as a guitar guitar wizard, he started playing around with the keyboards in Van Halen and a lot of the Van Halen music, and you had Bon Jovi and all these other bands that were very much keyboard oriented bands. And Judas Priest wanted to experiment with some of that, and that's what we got with Turbo Lover. Now, back in 1986, Priest received some backlash for the new kind of keyboard-oriented music they were putting out. It was much more polished, much more commercial than what your typical Judas Priest album would sound like. Um, but it got mixed reviews. There were 50% of the Judas Priest fans loved it, 50% hated it. So it was a mixed bag for the fans back then. And it's controversial among fans when it was released because, like I said, it was loaded with keyboards on it. It has become a life favorite over time, however. And so it's interesting that it received so much backlash when it first came out, but they still play that song in concert. You go see the band to this day, and it's become one of the favorite tracks that the bands love to hear the band perform. The fans love to hear the band perform live. So it's interesting that in 1986 it received that kind of backlash, but now it's still very much a part of a live show. Electric Eye, as you can see, like I said, it's in no chronological order here. The track listing is all over the place. Number 9 we get from 1982, Electric Eye. That was always one of my favorite tracks. You know, Electric Eye. Now, here's what you need to know about Electric Eye. It was a futuristic song about surveillance and loss of privacy, more relevant today than it was when it was written. How true is that? Back in 1982, when Electric Eye came out, the internet didn't really exist. If it did, it was not as readily available to people as it is today. So there's all kind of Electric Eyes going on these days. It's much more relevant, I think, today, like we said. And Why It's Here is one of the band's most influential metal songs. That's true. In the 1980s, along with Living After Midnight, Heading Out to the Highway, Breaking the Law, You Got Another Thing Coming. This is another Judas Priest song that you hear on rock radio, metal radio. It was all over radio. So even though Judas Priest was a metal band, you'd hear Judas Priest songs like these being played on the radio from time to time. Number 10, again, this is another more modern song from 2024. Crown of Horns, off of the very latest Judas Priest studio album, which of course was Invincible Shield. It's the newest song here on the Greatest Hits collection. So for no other reason, I think it deserves to be featured here. It's a melodic anthem about resilience and overcoming hardship. It shows how strong the band remained in the 2020s. And I agree with that because, again, Judas Priest is a band that could have, like so many others before it, just put out like greatest hits collections like this. But, finally we're getting this. And I think it's about time for one of these. And everybody could have just gone out and just given us the greatest hits every summer and no new music. But Judas Priest, they continue to pump out new music, and that's one thing I've always loved about the band. And as far as Why It's Here, like I said, it represents the current era of Judas Priest. If you had to ask me what's my all-time favorite song and the best of Judas Priest, I'd have to say Living After Midnight, track 11. And of course, we said it originally came out in 1980 off of the British Steel album. It's a straightforward party rock anthem. You can't argue with that. It's one of Judas Priest's most played live songs, most played songs on the radio. You hear it so often on classic rock radio these days. It helped turn the British Steel album into a breakthrough album. And Why It's Here is because, like I said, it's one of the band's biggest sing-along hits to this day. That's, I think, why I love the song so much. It's an ultimate rock anthem, and you just can't help but sing along to it. Number 12 from 1990, Painkiller. It's a dark horror themed metal epic. It tells the story of mysterious monsters terrorizing a town, frequently cited by fans as one of the best tracks on Painkillers. And again, the fans have spoken. That's why it's here on this album. Um, and it adds a heavier, darker flavor to the Best of collection. 1981, one of the songs I've already guys told you is one of my all-time favorite. That's another one that just can sing along to. It's a road song anthem about freedom and independence. It became an FM radio favorite in the early 1980s. And again, very much like Living After Midnight, this is one of those songs that, from the Point of Entry album, that became a big time radio hit. And people still love it to this day. Okay, now track 14. We're getting to the end of this. I've got just two more after this. Better by You, Better With Me. Now, this song came out in 1978 off the Stained Class album. It was originally recorded by Spooky Tooth. Okay, interesting. I never knew that. I thought Better by You, Better. I thought this was a original Priest tune. Come to find out, very much like Diamonds and Rust, this is very much a cover. Priest turned it into a heavier metal track, which is interesting. It became infamous during the 1990 backmasking court case against the band. And we're going to get into that in part 2 of the episode next week. So that's why I decided to make part 2 about the trial, because this is we'll be talking about this song, because this is actually the song that they were being sued for. It was one of the most historically significant songs in the Priest catalog. The Sentinel from 1984, the Defenders of Faith album, features some of the greatest twin guitar work in metal history by, of course, the legendary guitar duo of Glenn Tipton and K.K. Downing. Often ranked among the band's best songs by fans, combines melody, speed, and epic storytelling. Why it's here on the Best of Judas Priest album? Because it's a favorite among lifetime Priest devotees, okay? Diamonds and Rust, number 16, the final track on the Best of Judas Priest album. It comes off of the 1977 album, Sin After Sin, originally written by Joan Baez, as we said. And Judas Priest transformed this folk song, the classic folk song, into a heavy metal classic. Now, that is a very hard thing to do, but they pulled it off. And I dare say that the more people these days, when they hear Diamond and Rust, they think of it as a Judas Priest song, not a Joan Baez song. And not taking anything away from what Joan Baez, because she's a writer, she's the original person that recorded the song. But Judas Priest, just like Van Halen did in 1978 with covering the Kinks' "You Really Got Me." Van Halen put their stamp all over that song. Well, Judas Priest did the same thing with Diamonds and Rust. And why it's here? Because it's a unique and beloved part of the band's catalog. So why not? Well, I really had a lot of fun doing this episode number 36, talking about the new Best of Judas Priest album. Go out and get this. I would highly recommend you get the CD. Get the vinyl if you want, but CD, you get 16 tracks, not just 10. So and the CD, I think, is actually cheaper, which is interesting because you get more tracks. And I've been your host, Jason JRock Houston. As you can tell, I'm a huge Judas Priest fan. I love this new Best of collection. I love the fact that it's not chronological, doesn't know chronological. The track listing's all over the place, and that's what really makes it so fun to listen to this way. I strongly urge you to go get the album, and it's Living After Midnight, Rocket to the Dog, Breaking the Law. Man, these are all some of my favorite Priest songs. Electric Eye. Now, I want to hear, what are some of your favorite Judas Priest songs? What do you think of a new Best of album? Do you think they did a great job of picking songs throughout the band's entire career? I think my only complaint, which I agree with people, is Metal Gods should have been on here. But then one of these other deep cuts might not have made it onto the album. So, you got to stop and think about that. But thanks for tuning in to part 1 of our Judas Priest special. We'll see you next week for part 2 of episode number 36. We're going to really talk about the 1986 six trial, when Judas Priest became the true defenders of the heavy metal faith, if you will. So we'll talk about all that in next week's episode. See you next week. Take care. Bye for now.